my colleagues Curran Price and David Rue. Welcome, everyone, on this Wednesday afternoon. And colleagues, what I'd like to do is bring this meeting to order. And if there are no objections, I'd like to move items 2, 3, and 7 on consent. Seeing as, are there cards?
Yeah, we do have a few cards.
Okay.
These are all turned in by Mr. Spindler.
Okay. Cards by Mr. Spindler. Are there any other cards?
That's why consent.
Mr.
Chairman, you said.
Yeah, except it looks like we have some comments on possibly these items. There is no public comment today since it's a special. Let's see. Yeah, we have some comments on these items. All right, so we have one public speaker on these items. That'll be Mr. Spindler. You have 2 minutes on all of the items that you filled out cards for. Start the clock, please.
Yeah, so Mr. Herman also submitted a card, so for the record, he said, fuck you, so, but he had to go home with his dog. So, let's see, number 1, open park restrooms. Yes, this is good for CD11. As you know, when you got to go to Venice Beach and you want to take a shit, it's very difficult to do it right now on the beach, even dogs. You know, I mean, I see people with dogs. Even the dogs got nowhere to use the bathroom. So people are trying to use the bathroom. They're trying to take a shit, and the only place they can do it is in the alley behind somebody's car or at somebody's hubcap. That's no place to go to the bathroom. And, you know, when I go to the bathroom, you know, to save energy, I usually turn the lights off when I go in the bathroom. That's always a good thing. So every time you go in the bathroom, turn the lights off to save electricity, save energy. So we should have dark bathrooms at Venice Beach, because Venice Beach has got a lot of homeless people. They don't have showers. They have nowhere to go. And then now you got those little camper ordinances with this bullshit, you can't have a camper in the street. And then Mitch O'Farrell says you can't rent out a camper. And the other Mitch says you got to have a permit to rent out a camper. So where are people going to go? They can't even take a shit. So when you go to the beach and you want to enjoy the beach and you want to take a shit, you got to have a place to go, and you need an open park restroom at Venice Beach. Because Mike Bonin's a drug addict. He goes to the beach, and when you take drugs, you got to urinate a lot. That's another thing. So, yes, I fully support item 1, the most important thing. The rest of this shit, and I'm going to go to David Rue's attention, number 7, that Taylor Yard, he was right. David Rue was right. We got to get out of Taylor Yard. It's costing the city a mint. Fuck Taylor Yard.
All right. For anyone who has never been to a hearing, and that might be a handful of you, you just witnessed the First Amendment in action. Anyone can speak in a vile manner. They can say racist remarks. They can say uninformed remarks. They can try to get a rise out of people. And that is just part of the deal with attending any meeting or committee hearing at City Hall. So I apologize on behalf of the speaker for all the offensive language he just used, since he doesn't have the character to do so himself. With that, I'd like to go with item number 1. Mr. Sutton-Willis, will you please, actually, let me back up. I'd like to take items 2, 3, and 7 on consent if there are no objections. So that shall be the order there, and then we'll go to item number 1, Mr. Sutton-Willis.
Item number 1, City Attorney Report and Ordinance and Department of Recreation and Parks to report relative to amending subsection S and adding new subsection T to section 63.44 of the LA Municipal Code to allow the Board of Recreation and Parks Commissioners to open park restrooms at Venice Beach.
Thank you, sir. We are joined by Kathy Santo Domingo from the Recreation and Parks for this presentation. Thank you and welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. Kathy Santo Domingo, Department of Recreation and Parks. The item before the committee is in support of an ordinance to allow the department to open restrooms at Venice Beach. Currently, the current LAMC does not allow for the department to open park operations for restroom facilities. This ordinance provides us the language which would allow for Rec and Parks to operate and open the facility basically between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. The ordinance, the draft ordinance, was approved by the Board of Rec and Parks in October of this year.
Okay, that is the Board of Recreation and Parks Commissioners.
Correct.
All right. And what are some of the staffing issues related to keeping the restrooms open 24 hours? Was that explored in the commission hearing?
It was actually not discussed in the commission hearing. There's been numerous conversations during the budget process in the prior fiscal year as well as the current fiscal year. And the department is currently funded to allow us to open one restroom building. There are 6 restroom buildings within Venice Beach, about 58 stalls. So of that, the current budget allows for us to open one of those buildings. Upon approval of the ordinance, we would then need to go back to our board for the approval of which particular building would be opened. And then with that as well, addressing the CEQA and the coastal development approval for that particular facility.
All right, thank you. Colleagues, any questions or comments on this? No? All right, so I'm going to recommend that we approve the recommendations of the Board of Recreation and Parks Commission report. So thank you. Thank you so much. So that shall bring us to item 4 and 5, which we'll bring together. Mr. Sutton-Willis, if you could read the item.
Okay. Item number 4, Department of Cultural Affairs report relative to arts development fees refunded to developers pursuant to the fiscal year 2014-2015 Arts Development Fee Expenditure Plan. Item number 5, Department of Cultural Affairs report relative to the updated annual expenditure plan and fee status report for the Arts Development Fee Program for fiscal year 2017 and 2018.
Thank you. And colleagues, just as a refresher, for most of the rest of 2013 and early 2014, this council unlocked the arts development fee that had been in a legal limbo for the better part of a decade. And we worked closely together at that time, and Councilmember Huizar and myself really made this a priority. And so we had this wonderful adoption of the framework that has resulted in artwork across the city being very well funded and these wonderful new programs. So it is in that light that we're going to have this discussion and report. So I welcome you, Ms. Filer. Thank you. And we're also joined by... Okay, thank you.
So Tanya and I will sort of tag team on reporting on both of these items, and they actually are quite complementary in terms of the content. So I think we can use items from the Council File 170600 to also respond to questions about the expenditure plan. So as part of the budget hearing last May, the department was instructed to report back on 2 items. One was the amount of arts development fees that have been refunded since the council unlocked the fees, and the second was the how much in arts development fees have been spent for the past 2 years on projects. So in terms of the first project, in fiscal year 14-15 arts development fee expenditure plan budget, $562,000 have been refunded. Or were refunded, and in the subsequent years for 15-16 and 16-17, there were no additional ADF fees that have been refunded or required to be refunded. Additionally, to date, the instruction asked us to report back on 2 years of ADF expenditures. We just decided to go ahead and submit a report to include the past 3.5 years. So as of October of 2017, there have been $3.3 million spent in ADF projects on roughly 44 different projects throughout the city.
Say that number again, if you would.
3.3 million. Yes, that's a total of what's shown in the reports for 3.5 fiscal years, from 14-15 to the current fiscal year.
Okay.
So as part of our, so those are the instructions for the first item number 4, and that segues into the ADF expenditure plan that we have in front of this committee today. The administrative guidelines require us to make findings on any fees that are over 5 years, and to meet with each council office to identify to what use those fees should be put. And so our report today shows or identifies $1.1 million in priority findings that have to be identified before the end of the fiscal year. and an additional $1.3 million in ADF fees that will be used to support the citywide public art initiative, current LA. And so we have identified fees for both of those initiatives, and excuse me, just so in terms of taking you through the report. On page 3, we have a listing of the cash balances or the amounts of arts development fees that have been collected in each council district over the past, over the past 5 years. We're showing their prior expenditure balances that have been appropriated or we've identified uses for, but those fees have not been spent down yet. We have the priority findings identified, fees that remain in the trust fund that are fees that are less than 5 years, and then the fees that have been identified to support the public art biennial, which is slated to happen in 2019. On page 4, we identify, just to give you sort of a summary of the types of projects that have been funded over the past 4 years, and what the data tells us is that roughly 93% of all of the projects and typologies that have been used, that have been supported with ADF, have been new initiatives, as opposed to some of the more long-standing projects in a district that the council office has wanted to use those fees to sort of support and stabilize a long-standing project. So we just give a few examples of some of the new initiatives that have been funded with this project, with ADF funding. Additionally, on page 4, or page 5, we identify just the types of projects that the fees have been used for over the past 3.5 years. Festivals, typically music festivals and film festivals, seem to be the sort of leading interest, certainly by the council offices, and then just a breakdown of the other types of program funding that have occurred with these projects. So I think the report in the item 4 gives you exactly what the projects were and by what council district, who the contractor was, and then this report sort of gives you more context in terms of what type of projects have been funded over the past 3.5 years. So this report basically is asking for approval to expend an additional $2.4 million for this coming fiscal year, and it identifies roughly $445,000 to absorb our administrative costs, which will leave roughly $2 million available for new arts programming. So we can take any questions you might have.
Terrific. Question in terms of the interest that's accrued and how that is that assigned to the individual projects? I know that's a calculation that has to figure into the allocation of funding. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We were able to recently get a new senior accountant to calculate the interest and time for this report. So in the past, what you've seen is the interest isn't typically captured by the time we come to committee, but it is when we go to council. This report gives you the final number with the interest included in that's associated with that particular ADF address account. So it's based on the CPI and the interest that was collected the previous year that gets amortized across all of the accounts in Trust Fund 516.
And that's all in the report?
Yes. In Attachment A, you'll see the
Attachment A. Okay, perfect. And can you elaborate on what the current LA program?
Yes, current LA is a public art biennial that was established and created by the Department of Cultural Affairs in 2015. We received a grant of $1 million from Bloomberg Philanthropies. It was a new program to fund cities who are interested in making temporary public art projects. So we applied for the grant. We got funding our proposal was awarded funding, and then we used ADF funds to match it. Current LA is it's a curated public art biennial or public art exhibition. It's up for roughly 1 month. We identify a site in each council district The theme of the first initiative was based on water. We wanted to really look at the sort of drought and the effects of the drought on the city. And we worked with the Office of LA River Works, the Department of Water and Power, Rec and Parks, to identify park sites that were located either along the LA River or some aspect of the city's water management system, like lakes and dams and the ocean, etc. We commission artists to make a site-specific work, and we work with other nonprofit organizations to develop specific programs at those sites. So for the first year, we had over 33,000 people in attendance. The exhibition was up for 1 month, and we programmed roughly 163 discrete events over the course of the month. The project was a tremendous success, and as a biennial, what that suggests is that this exhibition will occur every 2 years. It's turning out that it'll maybe happen every 3 years. So our goal is to have the next edition in fall of 2019. I don't want to say what the theme is going to be because we want to have a big press announcement, and of course all the council office will be invited in February. I think what we're thinking about at this point is to maybe have 3 more editions of the biennial and then sort of sunset it. But ultimately what we're trying to do is have artists take a critical look at some of the issues that are affecting the city and sort of use the arts to sort of have a dialogue with the public to look for solutions and to see how we can get more civic engagement to sort of solve some of these pressing issues.
Terrific. Colleagues, questions, comments about this report?
No, I think it's a very thorough report. A lot of work has gone into it, and I'm anxious to see that we're able to allocate these resources at the district level in ways that makes a difference. I wasn't clear about something you said earlier. I know last year we had to spend some money before we lose it, or it was lost. And you said we're not in that box currently?
No, those are the priority findings that have been identified.
So essentially, we've embedded that into our process as part of the guidelines that were established in 2014 to meet with all of the council offices through the months of September through October to make findings or really identify projects. So that really stops the clock on all of these fees so that they're never subject to a refund again.
Thank you.
Wonderful. No, we're good. All right. So let's keep creating great art and putting this money to use across the city and keep up the great work. Thank you so much. So what I'd like to do is for item 4, note and file the Department of Cultural Affairs report and then approve the recommendations for item 5 in the report without objection. All right. I'll be the order. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you so much. All right. And that brings us to item 6.
Item number 6, Housing and Community Investment Department report relative to the Transgender Advisory Council and issues affecting the transgender community in the city. We have staff available for discussion.
Thank you. I know that Francisco and Karina are joining us for the presentation. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Sure. Identify yourself and please take it away.
Francisco Ortego at the Housing Community Investment Department. I oversee the Commissions and Community Engagement unit, under which the commission, the Human Relations Commission sits, and under the Human Relations Commission is the Transgender Advisory Board.
I am Karina Samala. I'm the current chair of the Transgender Advisory Council of the City of Los Angeles. I'm also the chair of the working group that developed the policies on interaction with transgender individuals with LAPD.
Thank you. And I know we have at least 4 additional members of the Trans Advisory Council. Welcome and thanks for being here.
Yeah,
And thanks for all your volunteerism.
I'd like to acknowledge all my court members also.
Okay.
We have here Terry J., who is the chair of law enforcement
Okay.
and committee, and Jasmine Creighton, chair with the Midnight Stroll, James Nguyen with housing, and we have here Gia Ryan with job development.
Terrific.
That's first.
No, I mean, if you want to, please.
I'd like to thank the council, Norfolk Council members who are here to help us also pursue all the issues and problems that we have with our community. Special thanks to Mr. Fowles who's been there guiding us all the way since even the very first when you were elected. You were there for our community, and I thank you so much for that. With the reports, you want to continue?
Yeah,
the
of
reports?
course. So, thank you for the opportunity to, first and foremost, come before this committee and to really highlight the work of the Transgender Advisory Council. The Transgender Advisory Council, reflected in this report, was started some 2 years ago now by the mayor. And it's not an official city entity per se, but it is under the purview of the Human Relations Commission. And it's been meeting since 2016 to begin to address issues that are directly affecting the transgender community in the city of Los Angeles. These members have come from all walks of life and come from different parts of the city, and have also been part of other bodies that have addressed transgender issues. As the Human Relations Commission and the board, they've been reporting directly on their activities to the Human Relations Board for that time. And they're a 9-person body. They select those members are selected through a process that's an internal process that includes commissioners from the Human Relations Commission and some council members that have taken a real interest in the work of the Transgender Advisory Council. We've been asked by Council Chair Mitchell Farrell to really provide an overview in this report of not only the challenges of the transgender community, but some of the work that's being done and some of the fine work that's being done by the members that were just mentioned here behind us. And you know, the areas that we've identified, or that they have identified and have been working really hard to bring attention to, have been, of course, housing and homelessness has been one of the main issues. Public safety has been another issue that has been at the forefront. As a matter of fact, part of the part of the evolution of the Transgender Advisory Council came out of a working group that started in 2010, working with the LAPD to try to develop policies that would really have officers on the ground who were having exchanges or interactions or contact with transgender individuals, especially specifically in the Hollywood area, that the working group developed policies for the Los Angeles Police Department that were ultimately adopted by the department. Out of this sort of continuous meeting, this group, the TAC was formed some years later to address a broader issues not only of public safety, but of housing and now job readiness and job development, and then also health concerns that really are affecting the community at a rate that don't affect other communities. For example, having just the transgender community not have, health and dental health care access, where most cisgender individuals have that. In addition, bringing attention to the language that we use when it comes to gender identification. You know, when we first talked here right now, we, usually when we have meetings with the Transgender Advisory Council, we talk about how we want to be identified and what our pronouns are. And so it's a part of what they're bringing to the city and the consciousness of the city and to the city family and to just policymakers in general, is that they're a community that's vibrant, that's alive, that's working, that's engaged, that's wanting to bring attention to these issues, but wanting to be active in those issues, not passive, wanting to really bring not only attention to these issues and move away from them, but really understand intricate policies. And also, just going back a little bit to that language, is to really be inclusive as much as possible when we talk about gender non-conforming or gender non-binary individuals, that those individuals and that kind of language be reflected in city and sort of the way the city expresses itself when it comes to gender. So reflected in this report is, by the way, I got to just give props where props are due, right? I want to give a lot of the credit for this report to our team member Sandra Cervantes, who really was at the head of really creating this report, and she's right behind us. So Sandra, thank you for your hard work on this report. And so, but also wanting to bring attention to Mr. O'Farrell's office and your staff for really bringing attention to this issue and to this particular community that it continues to, I think, not only bring attention to that, and by bringing attention to transgender issues, we're bringing attention to the intersectionality of other issues having to do with, harassment, sexual harassment, gender equity, and these issues are issues that the transgender community is really bringing to our attention. So, if you have any questions about the report and what's in it and what we can highlight or what we can clarify for you, we'd be more than happy to do so.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a great choice of suit, shirt, and tie,
Yes,
by the way.
I thank you very much.
It's perfect. Okay. Ms. Amala, would you like to add to this?
No, he has already elaborately expressed my gratitude to the City Council and the City of LA, a progressive city, for really helping us push through with our issues and helping our community. Thank you.
Very good. And I want to express my gratitude to the HRC, for sure. Francisco Ortega in particular, Sandra Cervantes as well, thank you. And Mr. Sutton Willis, and you, Ms. Samala, who contributed to this report.
Yes.
And it's a great job. And then my team who works on this, who cares so deeply about this issue, Tony Aranaga and David Heron and Star Parsamian. It's
Great
important
stuff.
to all of us.
Great
So
stuff.
thank you. So a couple of questions. Remind me again, how often does the TAC meet?
Well, the TAC meets monthly. It meets It meets so on the third Thursday of the month. They meet for their general board meeting, and then the following week. So they meet twice per month. The following week they meet for the subcommittees.
All right, great. Now, you have enough experience now. Enough of time has gone by. So, what are some of the frequent challenges that you face in terms of providing adequate administrative support for the TAC, the HRC, to the TAC, et cetera?
A few.
Keeps you busy.
Yeah, well, it keeps us busy for sure, and I think that for us, you're always going to hear us say, our bandwidth is not where it needs to be in terms of our staffing and having people cover these. The meetings, and this is strategic, by the way. The meetings are held in the evening, in part because the community works and the community needs to be attending. So for us internally, it creates a challenge of overtime and things like that. But certainly the other challenges, I think, as we're moving forward with the it's creating a permanent structure, a structure that is transparent, that is inclusive, that has the community at large, the transgender community, being able to integrate itself to the work of this TAC. And one of the things that we brought up before is that currently this board is not a Brown acted board, so it's not mandated that that we follow the Brown Act. So part of that is both for public safety concerns for the community, because I think the community still feels very vulnerable. But the other concerns are also having to do with having certain elements within those meetings. But there is a conversation being had because I don't know if you know, but TAC and the Transgender Advisory Council is only one of two in the country. The Los Angeles city, the city of Los Angeles, is the largest municipality to have a body like this. So they are pioneers. The people that are sitting here, that are meeting and dealing with these issues, are really are groundbreakers, and they are the people that are going to change. As you saw in this last election cycle, you saw several transgender individuals ascend to political power. This is something I think that these pioneers, the Transgender Advisory Council, is at the forefront of.
Well said. And so the framework seems to be working, and the meetings and the participation is good. What are some of the issues that have risen to the surface as priorities? Just to name a few. What do you hear about
You
a
want
lot?
to take those?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to add one other thing. There's a third city, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Okay.
Just started 6 months ago.
Great.
I got a call from them regarding establishing it and also asking procedures how we started here in West Hollywood and Los Angeles. And with respect to that also, safety is our main concern. That's what I said. When we started this board also, I would like participation from the community at large. I'd like them to come to our meetings and voice out also. That's the reason why we were under the Brown Act.
Right. And safety in terms of hate crimes?
Hate crimes and
Primarily?
also people attending our meetings.
Who are abusive?
Yeah,
Potentially,
who
or
had
literally?
been a lot of slurs directed to me personally when I even go to public meetings and stuff like that I had to be escorted out by LAPD. And the commissioners police commissioners meeting, I had been escorted twice because of outrage from the public and still discrimination, slurs, and words that I have
Yeah.
directed to me.
One quick moment. Yes.
Oh, just Mr. Chairman, the person in the audience is disrupting the meeting. You might want to give him a warning.
Yeah, that is Mr. Spindler, and he's been disrupting quietly in the back, but audibly making these sounds that are getting a little more audible as the meeting progresses. So consider that your final warning for disrupting this meeting, Mr. Spindler. Please continue.
Yeah, that is our main concern also because of that. And that's the reason why we tried to let HRC know ahead of time. And since we're doing it at City Hall, also to make sure that we have security.
Wonderful.
So outlining what you just said and the question that you asked, public safety is at the top of the list. Certainly personal safety for transgender individuals just walking the streets.
Yeah.
I mean, doing this work and being part of helping staff this body has really given our staff, so our perspectives have really, the education that's been provided to us has been tremendous. In part, we see violence against transgender individuals throughout the country, really ugly and grotesque ways, and it's growing. And so from 2016, you see a marked spike in violence against transgender people, and in particular within that community, to minorities and black transgender women in particular. So there's a nexus here between also domestic violence and personal violence, that you see on the street at the street level, but abuse and general abuse. So public safety at a personal and also I think with law enforcement. So public safety having to do with one's person, and then when you come in contact with the law, and how the law then responds to your identity, how the law then responds to that stop, how arrests are made, what you're called, so identity and identification issues are a big concern for the transgender community.
Sure. And LAPD has established the protocol, though, correct? Protocol. I'm not saying it's always followed, but there is a protocol that has been established.
Yes.
And in your meetings with Assistant Chief Grimala and others, do you feel that those conversations are moving in a better direction?
I'll let
It is
Karina-
quite moving in because 3 of our members are also part of the LAPD working group. So it's moving forward. We're having a forum with law enforcement, with just specifically for transgender and law enforcement to iron out the details on how we can work together.
And just to add to that as well, the community, while you just stated incorrectly, that there's a process in the protocol that is in place. However, I think when we had our November 2nd public forum with the transgender community, we heard another story. So there's a flip side to that story, right? Where, yes, there are procedures in place. A lot of what we hear anecdotally is from the community is that those policies are being ignored. And so that part of the work here is to begin to, and I'll preface that, or I'll backtrack a little bit to say that the LAPD, it's specifically in the form of Assistant Chief Grimala, has been a champion of this community. It has really brought the level of the presence of the transgender community at a level to the chief of police, where I think that LGBT forums are now a commonplace. But beyond that, I think that when you talk to the folks on the ground and you talk to people behind me who have constituencies, they would tell you that those constituencies still feel profiled. They still feel that there's some sort of constitutional rights are still being maybe not respected or not being upheld for this particular
Right,
community.
So the sensitivity needs to spread a lot further
So
beyond the command.
Beyond that.
and they by the way, this is the beautiful thing about the transgender community. They don't just suggest, they don't just tell you the problem, they tell you that here's the solution. Part of that solution is more training, more engagement, more working with the divisions to create opportunities for training, competency, cultural competency. We have in the ranks of this body a trainer who does phenomenal trainings on how to, they come to the city family and provide those trainings, or outside organizations to grow your understanding of the transgender community as a whole.
And I would like to add also, it's not only just LAPD, also other agencies such as the paramedic fire department needs those lack of training, and other agencies within
How engaged is the LAFD?
LFD. I had a meeting. Terry and I had a
Terry's
meeting.
shaking her head. No, they're not.
They didn't have the thing that came up. I had a meeting, both Terry and I, because of an incident that happened to Terry's client. We had a meeting with the chief executive officer, Nikki Bodway, and we set up a meeting to invite her, but she's been very busy because of the training. One of the things that came up is the budget for the training, having their officers be trained. They never had training for sensitivity training for the fire department.
All right.
So that's one of the things that we're pursuing.
It's at an infancy.
Right. Okay. But these are exactly the things that need to be daylighted so that we can address them. Correct. Wonderful. So tell us a little bit about the Midnight Stroll, and how can it serve as a model?
I would like to with our midnight stroll, Jasmine,
like
who
to
had
step forward?
also
Okay.
stepped up and created
Sure.
that.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here today. My name is Jasmine. I am an employee at APAIT, Asian Pacific AIDS Intervention Team, as well as a member of the Transit Advisory Board. And the Midnight Show was born out of a meeting that we had, a call to action with Assistant Chief Gramala. She attended one of our meetings actually this time last year, and had mentioned to the board that there were issues with our particular demographic in our community out at this particular hour. Any time from 12 to like 5 a.m. there were some issues. She felt there wasn't enough programs or enough folks that were active in community assisting other community partners. So through that meeting, we developed, I went back with my boss at the time, Peter Cruz, and discussed this matter, and he said come up with an idea so we could go out there and provide services. And those services that we provide are food, information from various agencies throughout Los Angeles. So we worked with the Center for Health Justice, the St. John's Wellness Center, APIT, the Imperial Court, and a few other organizations we work with. And we provide information. We have a beautiful hub that you were so kind, Mr. Farrell, in helping us navigate and nurture that relationship. So our hub is at 6500 Santa Monica Boulevard. And there we're able to provide testing, some food, a place for clients to actually rest and communicate with some of our counselors and our MFTs and LCSWs. They can get aligned with programs that are taking place during the daytime hours, because a lot of times we found that people had just arrived from all over the country, and Santa Monica was a place that they were told from wherever they came from that it was a safe place, or they could possibly meet some celebrity and somebody would change their life, and provide them with the things that they need. But as we know, it is it can be quite different, and people often are experiencing homelessness or some sort of substance abuse can come into play. And we found that they can be very young too, as young as 16 years old, and sometimes the center doesn't have space or the occupancy to house everyone that's navigating through the streets. So we've been doing it. It'll be almost a year now. January is when we started, and this Friday night, the 1st of December, which is World AIDS Day, we'll be out there doing the work.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
And
thank you.
I'd like to also thank Daniel Henning of the Blank Theater for offering
Yes.
his theater. He's a friend of mine, ours, and he's a real supporter of the Midnight Stroll. So
It's
thank
been a
you,
really big
Blank
success,
Theater.
and we've been
I
able
would-
to
I
service
would like
the
to
community.
thank you and
Yeah.
That's
your
okay.
district for helping us. I know there's a big population with our transgender community in your district.
Yeah.
And
Well, we need to
thank you
take
for the
services
support.
where, deliver the services to the people where they are,
Yes.
right? And that's what this is all about. That's what these types of programs are all about. And what are some of the things that you hear from strangers that you walk up to and say, hey, we've got services, we've got food, we've got testing, we've got a lot of things that we can help you with. Come and see us. What are some of the most common themes you hear?
Well, they're very grateful for us being there, providing them, food, giving them some shelters even. Also, they ask for sometimes also shoes from us. So we're
Shoes.
trying to find places that would donate shoes. We already give them clothing also and blankets.
Okay.
We were there. So there's different agencies
All right.
within our community that's helping us and also giving us, all these contributions to help those in need right there on the
Terrific.
street.
Why don't we make a
Homeless.
Christmas wish list? Seriously, and then we can shop it around to charitable companies that might be able to donate these types of items, and then we can start distributing them at the Midnight Stroll.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yes, and another thing, people have actually been able to access services. So we've been building a relationship with the Wine Guard downtown LA, and as you know, that's basically the only place that anyone can navigate homelessness at the moment is through Skid Row. So developing that relationship, we've often been able to have the clients that are experience homelessness on the boulevard be able to go down there and access a space to stay. And being that the majority of our clients can often, be of trans experience, it could be difficult, aligning them in the right facilities and making sure that they're, receiving some type of, respectful. I can't think of the word right now, but just being, considered, respected.
Gesture.
Yes, in that process.
Friendly
And
gesture.
so they've been really well at housing the girls in rooms where they're safe and they can continue to access services. So the purpose of that is so they have somewhere to sleep and rest at night, while in the day they can come and access services throughout the various community partners that are associated with the Midnight Stroll.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thank you. Colleagues, questions or comments?
I just
Mr.
want to,
Price?
first of all, thank those that have been involved with the advisory council. It really has been extraordinary work, groundbreaking, and it's good to know not just here in Los Angeles, but really statewide and across the country. I'm proud that our community stepped up to the plate. I know in CD9, this last count, homeless count, really showed an uptick with youth. And I know that at least one organization in our community, CRCD, has been focusing on transgender youth. But is there any general programs, any programs citywide that focusing on youth, and how have
That-
trying to really address that particular need?
And that's one of the reasons.
1800.
Yeah, and that's also one of the reasons we have a spot for our youth also in our advisory council. We have Addison Rose, who's our youth, and who brings in also problems with our youth and also how we deal with our youth because they are our future. So we are working with also different organization that deals with the youth, and also GIA also is working with our youth program.
But to answer your question, there is a Children's Hospital of Los Angeles that have direct program services for trans youth, and as well as the LGBT Center on Schrader, which is actually building a larger establishment in the near future. But if you needed access to someone to speak with, I would definitely talk to them, or you can talk to us, and we can nurture that relationship.
Proud of the efforts that have been undertaken by CRCD, dealing specifically SPA 6 dealing with the youth. I'm just applauding that, saying we need to have more services.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying, is there another? Yeah,
No, it's one of
yeah.
the-
Basically, those are.
applaud
Yeah.
what you're doing, but say we need to be doing more.
Oh,
And in
so-
fact, in terms of needs, I know you talked about our priorities. Certainly, safety is one. You referenced that very clearly. The report suggested also a health disparity.
Health.
There's significant health disparities
Yes.
that impact the trans community.
Significantly more
Yeah,
than
so
other.
some of it
Yeah.
in terms of
Sure,
access to
I think
healthcare.
they're more I think versed in sort of what the health impacts are. But if you look at some health data, and some of it is reflected in the report, and the section towards the end on health, I think it's one of the last sections. But you see in that section so for cisgender people like myself, the sort of for example, just looking at HIV infection. You look at that and you see that for trans women, it's 15 point something percent that are currently sort of affected by the virus. And you look at trans males also that are like 0.6%. You see a tremendous disparity from the general public. And so access to good health care for the transgender community is a tremendous challenge, and something that I think being here at this table with you bring attention to that disparity. I think that more services for those folks that are infected, but beyond that, basic health care. I think when transgender people cannot go to see a doctor for basic medical care, you see the community then moving more and more into homelessness. So there's a direct connection between sort of that health disparity and how people are moving, how the transgender community is moving into the streets. And so you see a lot of displacement being sort of taking place because we don't have appropriate, and then you just, that's just the tip. That's the tip of the iceberg for the community. Now you do get health care. Say you do go to a doctor. Then there's a lot of trauma that happens there with medical professionals who don't know how to treat the transgender community once they are accessing that health care. So the layering of obstacles for this community is something that this body is continually bringing attention to. And when you're asked, when you go for a physical and you're a trans woman, and your doctor that is not trans friendly, you're going to walk out of that visit with your doctor traumatized by that experience, and you're not going to want to go back. And so a lot of this has to do with education, but it also has to do with the capacity building that needs to take place. And health is a tremendous challenge for this community.
I just wanted to say, I wanted to really thank and acknowledge the leadership of our chairman, Chairman O'Farrell, and of course, Councilmember Bonin, and also all the work that the Human Relations Commission has been doing, as well as this groundbreaking, revolutionary Transgender Advisory Council. I mean, you guys are doing groundbreaking work, and whatever I can do to support. And I'm glad that you brought up the LGBT Center is in my district, and we are championing that, and it is going to be, 100 new beds for transitional age youth and 100 new beds for seniors, with a focus on those who are at risk or are homeless. It's bordering your district, so it serves. It does.
And those
goes
no border.
Yes, it goes across boundaries, but I'm glad that it is in my district, and I'm doing everything I can to support it. And but what you're doing is groundbreaking. Anything that the council and my office could do to support, please call on us. And thank you for your first of many reports.
Councilmember Ru, I just want to say thank you for that, and I think that it's very important. But I almost feel James Wen behind me, because I know that one of James's real concerns has been the shelter system for the city, and the shelter. I think that shelters run by the city, and how transgender people access those beds and access those shelter services. And one of the big things for the transgender community is if you're a trans woman and you go to one of these shelters, often these shelters are not prepared to receive
transgender people, so they put you in different populations. This is something we see also with the with incarceration and detention with law enforcement. Is that transgender people are put not with the population that they're identifying with, but with the population that officer or that individual or that person and during intake is determining that you are. And so it's created violence in these shelters. It's created really unsavory situations. So again, the shelter system, by the way, in this group, again, it's not about just talking about it. They're about action. So they've been taking part with LASA and really providing LASA policy recommendations moving forward in terms of how to reform that process and how to be more inclusive. For example, something as simple as bathroom stalls, putting bathroom stalls on these, or having signage that is welcoming of transgendered individuals.
No, and I want to acknowledge my chief of staff is a LASA commissioner as well, and we're always grappling with these issues. And amongst the council members, we are talking about the need for more shelters overall, but there's a need for everything.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to homeless services, now, not just do we not have enough shelters or permanent supportive housing beds or support services for homeless individuals. If you do a subsect, and whether it be trans or whether it be non-English proficient, I mean, then you become there's even more of a greater barrier. And it's embarrassing to say, I mean, it's a first step and there's a long way to go that we're still stuck talking about bathrooms in many cases, right? But that's still an important first step, and we're going to go forward on that. But we're very cognizant of that. And, I mean, in my district, just even talking about a shelter, let alone for trans individuals, just the shelter is a big uproar, and not just mine, but any district. But it's a discussion that we are having because the whole city needs it. It's not just a certain area that needs to have it. It's the entire city needs it because the homeless population is throughout the city. The trans population is throughout the city. They're not all they don't follow borders, council district borders. That's why we need more. I mean, we just need more of everything. But that's why, I mean, by you, and it's about action. It's not just about a report, but it starts with first highlighting it in a report and letting us know and helping us give that direction. So I really appreciate the work that you guys do.
Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. And I neglected to mention my executive assistant, David Cano, in helping with the drafting of this report. I neglected to mention him, so I want to congratulate him as well. Thank you. So what I'm going to do is recommend that we approve the recommendations in the HCID report, department report, but also furthermore instruct the TAC to coordinate with our own AIDS coordinator for the city of Los Angeles, which we have, which is a position that some of us have fought to keep funded, so that position exists. So I would recommend meeting with our AIDS coordinator. And also, Mr. Rue mentions LASA, right? So LASA, they are the body that are taking the lead in drafting the framework for HHH funding, building permanent supportive housing for the homeless. So there's a link that's very, very important to what we're talking about as well. So I think it's critical to keep those conversations going and keep raising your hand saying, us, include us. Have provisions in this funding that's coming to the city to actually build brick and mortar housing and then provide services. And we should have a piece of that pie.
Yes,
Yeah.
wonderful.
So I'd recommend coordinating with LASA as well, in addition to the recommendations identified in the report. All right.
Thank you.
That shall be the order. Thank you so much for all your work, and we'll see you again soon. All right, that brings us to item 8, Mr. Sutton-Willis.
Item number 8, Bureau of Sanitation report relative to an update on the Los Angeles River Revitalization Master Plan.
Terrific. And we have with us the Bureau of Sanitation. And I know we have some folks from the MRCA here as well.
No. You want me to just do it here? Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. And one quick moment here. Steve, you didn't have a comment card, did you? No? You intended to? Okay. Why don't you, I figured as much, why don't you give your comment first, and then you can fill out a card. I figured that's why you were here. Yeah, if you don't mind. Okay, thank you. No, it's okay. I saw you out there, and I thought, you're here to say something.
Yeah. I was. Just give me 1 second here.
Okay.
So thank you for catching me and giving me the opportunity to speak. Steve Appleton. I am a river activist for many years, a public artist, and I do also serve as the City of LA rep for the county's Vector Control Board. So I have some experience both with the river, but also with thinking about public health. I want to urge that this committee look very hard at this draft policy and consider a more thorough conversation both about the risk and scientific basis of it, and also the potential impacts on the LA River. Where we stand right now with this policy, as I assess it, is that we would potentially be giving the most stringent recreational water closure standards on the LA River on any recreational water body, not only in Los Angeles County, but in the state of California. And we might be doing that on the basis of virtually no negative public health impact has been reported in the 5 years of having these open rec zones. We have kayaking, we have fishermen, we have hikers, and just a huge public interaction. On my own side, am I running over?
Just wrap it up. Yeah,
I'll
that's
wrap
okay.
it up.
Yeah.
What I want to say is we need some more time on this issue. Quick policy analysis of where we would be. Last year in Elysian Valley, where we kayaked, 88% compliant on the number of tests that were there with the swimmable water standard of EPA. If this policy had been enacted, I would see as many as 25 closure days based on that, the way it's constructed. That's 1/4 of the recreational zone season. I'm concerned about public access to the east side beach being more extremely closed than the local beaches. So those are my concerns, and thank you for.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Steve. We'll get you a card to fill out. All right. Yes, sir. From Sanitation, please identify yourself. And thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mas Dojiri, and I'm the Assistant Director for LA Sanitation. And I'm here to present the LA River Watershed Monitoring Program and the LA River Water Quality Testing and Notification Protocol. I'll try to be as fast as possible. It'll probably be about 15 minutes, so if I could ask for your patience. Why are we involved in the LA River Watershed Monitoring Program, or what we call the LRUMP? It's actually required in the Donald C. Tillman and Los Angeles Glendale Water Reclamation Plant National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or MPDS permits. The plan, this comprehensive regional monitoring program, was due to the Regional Water Quality Control Board on December 31st, 2007. It was developed by various stakeholders and patterned on a similar plan that was developed by the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project, as well as the Los Angeles County Sanitation Districts for the San Gabriel River. And instead of reinventing the wheel, we pretty much just customized that plan to fit LA River. The plan was submitted 10 days prior to the actual due date of the 31st. We submitted it on December 21st of 2007. Prior to the LRUMP, most monitoring was restricted right in front of the treatment plant discharge outfalls. So a little bit above, right at the point of discharge, and a little bit downstream. So it was a really focused monitoring program, which meant that most of the watershed was not monitored. Well, this caught the eye of the regional board and the state board, and they put it into our permits to develop this more region-wide watershed approach. And so we did that. All the stakeholders selected the Council for Watershed Health because they helped LA County Sand Districts and the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project to develop and manage and coordinate that program in the San Gabriel Valley. So we used them to manage and coordinate the program for LA River. Prior to this, we really didn't have an environmental management question-driven program. So that's what this new program, the LRUMP, does. It addresses 5 management questions. What are the conditions of streams in the watershed? Are conditions at areas of unique interest getting better or worse? Are receiving waters near dischargers meeting water quality objectives? Is it safe to swim? And are locally caught fish safe to eat. So the entire program was, well, actually part of the program was started in 2008 because of the review and approval process for this comprehensive monitoring program. Took some time by the regional board and the state board. By the time it was approved, we could only implement a portion of that monitoring program in 2008, and then from 2009 on until the present day, we've implemented the entire regional monitoring program. Annual reports are produced. The state of the Watershed report, which is a comprehensive report for 5 years of all our data, is produced every 5 years. The first one was produced in 2013, so if you do the math, the next one is 2018. We're actually going to start that process of analyzing and evaluating that data and assessing that data probably within a month or two, and then we'll go ahead and start writing that. So what are the results? The first question of what are the conditions of streams in the watershed, as you probably would guess, it depends on the physical habitat. If it's a concrete line channel, the biological community is going to be pretty degraded. By biological community, I mean algae, as well as benthic macroinvertebrates, primarily insect larvae. There are degraded water quality conditions, and they are more prevalent in urban regions, as you would imagine. Metals, nutrients, and benthic organisms. Are conditions of areas of unique interest getting better or worse? You have to remember that this 5-year watershed program was really the baseline, so we had no comparison. So in this next one, the 2018, we'll have this time series, and we'll be able to address this question a little bit better. We do know that the riparian areas are a little bit better, and we also know that the communities, the biological communities, are degraded around the concrete line confluence channels, which of course makes sense. And then the upper watershed is biologically better than the lower watershed because the upper watershed is more natural. Are receiving waters near discharges meeting water quality objectives? Yes, but I do have to qualify that we have observed degraded water quality conditions in the river, particularly around the confluence areas. The POTW effluent, if you don't know what that acronym is publicly owned treatment works. It's essentially our treatment plants, the 4 water reclamation plants.
You're probably going to be saying a lot of things that we don't understand or can articulate as well as you. So
yeah,
thank you for explaining.
I'm trying to explain it as I go, and you can certainly interrupt me. I have no problem with that. The fecal bacteria, dissolved metals, and suspended solids in the LL River. Actually, the effluent, the treated sewage of the water reclamation plants at DC Tillman Water Reclamation Plant, the City of Burbank's water reclamation plants, as well as the Los Angeles Glendale water reclamation plants, they're actually so clean that they're actually diluting the pollutants that are actually in the LA River. It's actually making it better. Is it safe to swim? This is one that, of course, I'll expand on the next series of slides after I finish the LaRump presentation. That's going to be a separate presentation that I'll try to go quickly through. But just very briefly, the kayaking areas occasionally exceed bacterial levels, 10% to about 25% at the Sepulveda Basin. That's one kayaking area. And then about above 50% at Elysian Valley. Now, I need to qualify that. That's Rec 1, meaning full body contact. That's swimming standards.
Right. That's not just falling out of a kayak and getting back in.
That's right, or just the splashing. We consider that limited Rec 1, and that limit actually is higher. So I had my staff compile a table. That's more in the area of 0% exceedances of the limited Rec 1, or up to maybe about 10% or so. So, and then we took a look at how many times there would be 2 consecutive days of closure of the LA River, and it's 3 times in the entire season. So I'll get back to how we're going to try to address that and make it better for the kayaking companies. But let me continue on. The testing and notification protocol, as Stephen mentioned, was drafted. The review comments from stakeholders were received. We sent it out to the LA River Watershed Monitoring Program stakeholders. That includes the environmental NGOs. It includes nonprofits like Council for Watershed Health. Friends of the LA River, Hilda Bay, the Department of Public Health, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and the LA County Department of Public Works, as well as the MRCA, the Mountains Recreation Conservation Authority. So we had a lot of people review this this draft. The comments all came in, and as you can imagine, they're pretty tripolar in what they want us to do. We can't do all of them. We can't satisfy all of them because some of them are in direct opposition to each other. But we are drafting responses to those. And then we're working with the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project, which is a joint powers agency that does research for us, as well as LA County Sanitation Districts, Orange County Sanitation Districts, and the City of San Diego for a potential bacterial source tracking, because we want to know where bacteria is coming from. And then once we find where it's coming from, the source of it, then we'll hopefully try to reduce that so we get less exceedances. Okay, so our locally caught fish safe to eat. There are a number of species of fish, not only in the main stem of the LA River, but the tributaries and some of the urban lakes. Common carp, largemouth bass, pretty much are safe to eat. The serving size and the frequency of consumption is dependent upon the species of fish and the site that is caught, that's fished at. And that's primarily because of mercury and PCB contaminant levels. DDT and the pesticide DDT and selenium do not seem to be a concern at any of the sites that we looked at. Okay, now to get to kind of the main topic was the sampling and testing protocol for the LA River for bacteria. The sampling actually begins Memorial Day to September 30th. So the reason I bring that up is that as far as review comments and revision of this testing protocol, we have plenty of time to get to May in order to do this. And we're thinking that we'll hold a stakeholder meeting sometime in March to go ahead and finalize and make sure everybody is aware that of what they need to do in order to test and to notify everybody if there are exceedances. We've increased the sampling and testing from 5 times a month to twice a week, so that'll be 8 times a month, obviously. And the data will be tabulated at lacitystan.org/water quality. Now, what is that tabulation going to look like? It's going to be a table, and it's going to have the actual numbers of bacteria, the E. coli bacteria. The cell will be green if the bacterial levels meet Rec 1 standards, meaning full body contact. In other words, swimming standards or surfing standards or, et cetera. And that limit is 235. MPN stands for most probable number, and it's based on 100 milliliters of sample. So although the water quality is suitable for swimming, no swimming is allowed. There's signs posted everywhere, no swimming in the LA River, main stem. If the number falls between 235, which is the Rec 1 standard, and 576, which is the limited Rec 1 standard, that's more what we think kayaking is, the splash level, people flipping over, etc. So if the number falls between that, we'll send out a precautionary notice to a distribution list that we have. And I'll get to that in a minute. The cell will be red if the bacterial levels exceed the limited Rec 1 standard of 576. And then a closure advisory will be sent out. And based on our data, it looks like maybe 3 times a season, but we have a procedure where we may be able to reduce that number. So that closure advisory would be sent out. Okay, so for the full body contact recreation, Rec 1, which is swimming, standard, if the E. coli levels exceed the Rec 1 standards, LA Sanitation would distribute a precautionary notice and the test results via email to that distribution list that I just mentioned. If there's a sewage spill that hits the LA River, that we know that hits the LA River, or if the sample exceeds the limited Rec 1 standard, which is 576, then the closure advisory will be sent out on the same day that we get the results. So we have to actually make sure that the results are valid, make sure that it passes all the quality control, quality assurance criteria, and then this email will be sent out, or notification will be sent out to all the relevant city offices, means all the council districts, MRCA, Mountain Recreation Conservation Authority, LA Sanitation website, the distribution list that I just mentioned for the precautionary advisory, the LA County Department of Public Health website, the LA Sanitation social media, which is Twitter, Facebook, etc. LA Stormwater website. We particularly like this one because there's so many followers of this particular website. We'll hit a lot of the public with this website. And then LA Sanitation and My LA 311 call centers. Okay, so what are we going to do if there is a closure advisory out there? If there's a sewage spill and it's known to affect the recreation zone, the closure advisory will remain in effect and daily sampling will commence. So we'll initiate daily sampling, and 2 consecutive samples have to be below the 576 limited Rec 1 standards in order for that closure to be lifted. Now, if a sampling location exceeds the 576, this is not the sewage spill now, this is just a sample that exceeds 576 in our routine monitoring, we will undergo or initiate accelerated monitoring. So we'll sample again right away, within 48 hours. And so within 48 hours, that location that exceeded will be resampled. If it exceeds again, meaning if the resample exceeds again, then we'll do it again in the accelerated sample. The closure advisory will be lifted when the sample no longer exceeds that 576 limit, and then we'll go ahead and resume the twice-a-week routine monitoring. The reason that we think that will reduce the actual number of closures of the kayaking area is because most, for the beaches at least, and probably the river as well, bacterial exceedances normally don't last longer than 24 hours, typically. So if we have an exceedance, what we call a hit, and we sample right away, most likely, in all probability, we won't have another hit, which means that they can go ahead and continue kayaking on the weekend. So what we want to do is have the sampling earlier in the week, maybe midweek, maybe Tuesday, so that we have enough time to take a resample, get the result, and notify the kayaking company. So that should reduce the number of closures of the kayaking. So that completes the PowerPoint presentation, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Mr. DeGiri. And we also have from the MRCA, we've got Sarah Rascon here and also Fernando Guerra. And they manage our recreation zones, both in Elysian Valley and Sepulveda Basin. So I might ask you to come up to be available to answer some questions as well, if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, come on up. So thank you for the presentation. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to have this is at the beginning of the recreation season this past May, there was, for the second year in a row, a release by Heal the Bay, which resulted in some overreaction, in my humble opinion, especially when we know that the water quality was tested by your and the city's testing source, and that is Watershed Health, right? And in collaboration with FOLAR, which they do water testing as well. And a lot of us believe that the water in the LA River is navigable and safe to navigate in a kayak. And I think there was some overreaction when Heal the Bay released their results for the second year in a row right before kayaking season began. And it resulted in this hastily drafted protocol for river use, which was a surprise to my office, especially right when we were about to launch these kayaking zones. And so I just want to make sure that before we proceed with adopting any city generated protocol that's outside of your thorough work from the Department of Sanitation, that we just stick with the facts and what we know and not overreact, which could result in a net loss of being able to access the river, which is what we all want to do, especially when we feel pretty strongly that it's safe. So anyway, that's kind of where all of this came from. So I really appreciate your thorough report.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was kind of hoping that that Heal the Bay could have done this in a more kind of quiet way, because we have been working with them since last year.
Which is what I thought.
And we actually took over the monitoring stations that they were doing last year, and we thought that we were working collaboratively on this, and for them, well,
No, I hear you.
not to do it, to not just call me and work on this protocol and notification protocol, kind of behind the scenes, would have been a better avenue, I think.
Right. Well, I think there are better avenues in general, because this hastily drafted protocol to apply to the river was done so without the knowledge of my office by the Riverworks office.
Yeah.
So again, I think that it was an example of jumping the gun and a little bit panicking, if you ask me.
I did want to mention that we worked with Liz Croson of the Mayor's Sustainability Office, as well as Mike Affelt of the River Project, I believe.
Yes.
So he was involved in this as well, as was the Department of Public Health, the MRCA, and the LA County Department of Public Works.
Okay, terrific. And so in terms of the kayaking, how many times last summer did you have to halt the kayaking based on some of the the examples given in this report? Or
Right. Again, my name is Fernando Gomez. I'm the Chief Ranger for the Mountains Recreation.
I'm sorry. It's
okay.
Gomez.
Gomez with MRCA. And just discussing this with Steve, because we were trying to remember from the actual data that was actually held there. I believe it was 2, maybe 3 times that we closed it. Out of the whole season. Now, that also entitles it to 72-hour closure that we followed since day one, when, back when Ed Reyes, the council member Ed Reyes, was around, and he started this pilot program, that we wanted to have a very kind of a safe record. Until now, for all the years that we have done this, we've had that record. We have bumps and scrapes and some injuries. We have. However, you're around water, you're around these kinds of things, you're going to end up with something. However, I consider that this program, in its totality of it all, has been really safe, with the ratio of either guides or rangers towards the participants. We have held everyone a standard to a state fire marshal standard of swiftwater team members when they go through these classes. So we've kept it, and everyone who has anything to do with this really wants the accessibility for all to use, and they want the safety as well. So again, we've worked with Moss, we've worked with everyone who's actually putting some effort into this, and I believe that yes, there's got to be something that we just can't all of a sudden we're just shutting everything down, because then you're right, it will minimize what the whole revitalization of the river will have. Then we could never be by the river. We could never be around there. So the river has taken a very different, everyone sees the river differently. The river's been the river. We've just seen it differently. And I think that our goal is to then, work to make it accessible and not make these rules so difficult that we can't even get in that water or be around this water.
Thank you. Well, that's why my office turned it into a draft as opposed to the word.
Right. And again, the thing that we've done,
it was an overreaction, clearly.
Yeah, and again, on the thing that we've also followed is that whenever it's rained, and even these closures, we have put the 72-hour closure in effect, and that's what was one of the prompts when Heal the Bay took a sample of this water, was during this closure. And of course, we know the river was closed. It was September, I think it was like 5 or 6, and those were the times when the river was actually closed on that time.
Thank you. And this is probably a rhetorical question, because there's no one here who actually came up with the protocols that I'm aware of. What river stakeholders, do we know of any river stakeholders who were actually consulted when these protocols were drafted, to our knowledge?
I think could I just give you a little bit of background information on this? KPCC, the radio that broke that news and published some of my emails and stuff, they after that article came out, they were putting a lot of pressure on our PAO, the Public Affairs Office, Elena Stern, to a point where she was calling, the reporter was calling her probably 2-3 times a week on, have you had the meeting yet on the protocol? Have you developed the protocol yet? And so we were under a lot of pressure to get this out. And so what I did was the Department of Public Health called a meeting, a conference call, and to develop a draft of this protocol. And I asked them if we could invite the environmental NGOs and nonprofits, and they flatly said in an email, no, absolutely not. We want to hurry up and get this thing drafted. And so we had the County Department of Public Health involved, and then later on we got MRCA because they had authority to close the river involved. And so it was really kind of a four, along with the mayor's office, and CD5 isn't Mike Elfelt. I don't.
No, he's with the mayor's office.
Oh,
Mike A. Phelps.
oh, that's right.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. And so we had this conference call, and we developed this protocol, and so I can't send it out as a matter of public record until it's final, and so I stamped it final essentially with Enrique's signatures so I could give it to the reporter. It went to the reporter, knowing that we were not going to implement it until May. And there was plenty of time to update it. I knew we had to update it because the regional board is thinking of changing some of those numbers that I gave you, the 235 and the 576. So I knew that we had to at least revise that, if not comments from the stakeholders.
Let me ask you though, how come we just didn't rely on the Watershed Health, our consultant who tests the water? Why didn't we just rely on them instead of?
They don't test our water. We do.
Sanitation.
We have our own. Yeah.
Why didn't we rely on our own resources rather than panic because Hill the Bay sends out this press release? I'm just curious.
I don't know.
Because their testing said different. Why
I don't know if panic is the right adjective there, but I think you're certainly right in that we were under a lot of pressure to get it out, and so with the Department of Public Health leading the way, because it is a public health issue, as well as a recreation issue. So that's why the MRCA was involved, and we were involved because we do the testing, and we were going to do the notification as well. So we essentially, those were the key players, I guess. But knowing that it could be reviewed and revised at a later date before we actually implemented it, I think that was the critical portion of that whole procedure. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, okay.
It does, but it still sounds like political pressure. But that's okay.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah.
It happens, but I just don't think we should yield to it, especially when we're putting so much investment and time in these recreation zones. Ms. Rascone. Yes. Sure.
So the river is very new to recreation and access, as mentioned by Fernando, only 5 years of the rec zone being available and open. So part of what came about from this protocol is the fact that there was no protocol. MRCA only has the 72-hour closure if in fact there is rain and runoff that goes into the river. So there was this question of when does MRCA close the river? And who tells MRCA to close the river, right? Who is the authority above the JPA that directs us to, and is there a closure or is there a closure advisory, which are two different things. And what we found was that LA County Department of Public Health was making the river a one-size-fits-all and labeling it as an ocean. But we have to close the river versus the beaches, which only have a closure advisory. And then we're now being or they're applying the standard of ocean water to the river, but full body immersion isn't available. So I think a lot of these kinks need to be worked out, and that's kind of how this came about, was the protocol and when does MRCA close the river, if in fact we close it, and who can tell us to close it.
Right. Well, it certainly isn't Hill the Bay. They should stick with the Bay.
Excuse me, Council Member.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, can you identify yourself for the record?
Sarah Rascone with the Mountains Recreation Conservation Authority.
Thank you. No, thank you. No, I get it. we're kind of making we're developing our, what's the word I'm looking for, frameworks, our models as we go along. Yeah, I understand. The templates. We're developing the templates.
Yeah.
As we bring the river back to life.
Yeah, it's still the Wild
And-
West.
right.
It's very new, and we're learning as we go.
Yeah, very good. Okay, terrific. Okay, I might have a few more questions, but thank you so much. Thorough report. Thank you, Fernando, for always being there and what you do at the river in these zones. Yes, Mr. Rue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this is just a fascinating conversation. Something because it's so new, we're going to have a lot more of these, and I think it's pretty clear from what you're saying, Mr. Chairman, because we're going to have a lot more unknowns, a lot more rules or regulations or protocols that need to be made in the future. But I think the key point is, as the chairman stated, is hopefully we'll go forward from this lesson as a collaborative way, because there is no one-size-fits-all solution, and this is going to be very complex. I just had two questions. When you say season, you say it's been closed about 3 times a season. Do you mean the whole year, or is it like summer?
No, it's Memorial Day. Well, it was Memorial Day to Labor Day, but we found out that the kayaking companies want to extend that until September 30th, and so we extended our sampling and testing program all the way to September 30th. So
you're basically in open season. So the outside of that time,
it's closed.
That is correct. So,
That's correct.
What by the closures that we're talking about is any days in between that time, the time frame that dates at Memorial to September 30th. It's how many days we've closed for those 72-hour portions. So if the time starts at 3 p.m., we will 72 hours from there. That's when we reopen back up.
And based on your collection samples so far, what's the average MPN? If you could even give it an average, because there's different parts.
That number actually wouldn't mean anything.
Okay.
The significant numbers are the percentage of exceedances or the number of exceedances above the Rec 1, the full body contact swimming limit of 235, or the 576, which is the limited Rec 1 kayaking level. I shouldn't say limit because it's not really regulatorily set.
So remind me again. Yeah, I think you said it before. How often do you collect samples, and how?
Twice. We're going to increase it to twice a week. We were doing it 5 times a month, so we're going to increase it by 3 additional sampling events per month.
Do you do it in random areas or certain areas, or how do you?
Oh, no. There's selected areas and there's selected stations along the kayaking area. We have other stations along the river, and we have stations along the tributaries and some of the Eaton Falls and Sturdivant Falls and Hanson Dam, and so we actually go up to the Angeles National Forest and sample up there as well.
So there is no average then, or you?
Not really. No average MPN, because it wouldn't really mean anything. Yeah, scientifically, it just doesn't mean anything, or regulatorily, it doesn't.
But basically, over 576 has only been 3 times in the season.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Okay, thank you. So what I'd like to do, colleagues, is just recommend the following. First of all, I'd like to rely more on Sanitation's own testing methods rather than anyone else who decides to test on their own and then cause a media frenzy. That's ridiculous. And then what I'd like to do is include a working group. Keep this item in committee. We're going to keep this item in committee, and instruct Bureau of Sanitation to include a working group of river stakeholders in a review of the effectuation of the draft protocols on the various river communities, the outfitters, the nonprofits operating in the rec zones, etc. Report back in February with a revised protocol, draft protocol that reflects these conversations. Report on the funding needed to contract with the MRCA to conduct this task as an annual contract rather than an ad hoc approach, which we've done for 5 years. In other words, we're looking...
I'm sorry, with who?
With MRCA.
We don't have a contract with MRCA.
No, I know.
Oh.
But I would be open to establishing one, possibly. No, what I'm looking for is a long-term funding mechanism. We fund this on an ad hoc basis every year, and this we'll be heading into year number 6, and so what I'd like to do is identify funding in the budget as well, and have sanitation participate in that, so that we can fund this, and it could become an annual contract rather than an ad hoc approach. Is where I'm going with this. Just explore that.
Okay. We've had a long-term contract with the Council for Watershed Health for this. And our director, Enrique Zaldivar, has asked me to let that expire, which it will expire in 2018, because his focus, or his concept for the LA River Watershed Monitoring Program, including this bacterial monitoring program, is to move it in-house. Because we have the capabilities. We are state certified. Our monitoring division, which I was the division manager of prior to being promoted to assistant director.
Okay.
We are state certified for a freshwater bacterial analysis, and Shield of Bay isn't.
Right.
So
I think I misunderstood you earlier then, because I thought it was Watershed Health, but you said no, we do it in-house. But I misunderstood that.
They manage the entire watershed program, but the actual bacterial monitoring, we do the testing.
Okay.
They go and sample, but we do the testing.
I see.
So yeah.
We'll do the sampling and testing after 2018.
We will probably contract out to a different
Okay.
group. Yes. So I can report back on that.
Okay, that would be helpful. That would be helpful.
I'll get some clarification on that for you.
Okay, so let me just re-clarify. Just report back on the funding to keep the recreation zones going every year.
Perfect.
Yeah. And those are the recommendations. Was I clear enough?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, terrific. Without objection, that's what we'll do. Thank you so much. And that was thanks for everyone for your reporting. And that was the last item. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.